Welcome to Arts in the City. I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson at the International Center of Photography Museum here on the Bowery. It recently opened at this new location with a thought-provoking, and some might say atypical show called Public-Private Secret. Take a look. Pauline Vermeer, the associate curator at ICP, says this is a show for the 21st century, expanding its focus from traditional photography to the rise of social media and surveillance and its impact on society.
I think it is a very experimental, very radical exhibition that really wants to push the boundaries of not only what is a photograph, because that's also what we're exploring here, what is the image, what is a photograph, what is the role of photography in our society, what is the role of the image, what is a photograph, what is an image, and then within that, which is more the medium, talking about what exactly we are exploring as a society through the image. The first one that you will come across is Gallery 1 is composed of 4 videos, 4 projects that play in turn, and that are projects by artists that explore the social media today and edit and gather material according to their take on what is good and what is bad about these images.
And while it is jarring to see, it does make a visitor wonder what he or she is to make of these first visuals. And it also makes you curious for what's to come.
And he started off with, well, this is the part of the job I really don't like.
A variety of images pulsate in a large gallery in the center's lower floor, from photographs and videos to real-time internet feeds and mirrors. Your public, private, and secret lives are examined through the themes of celebrity, the other, surveillance, and intimacy. Seeing 18th century photos of the emancipated slave Sojourner Truth collide with the 21st century book of Kim Kardashian selfies is also no coincidence, even though it can leave a visitor perplexed. And that portion of the exhibit wouldn't be complete without the Polaroids made famous by Andy Warhol.
We were discussing the famous 15 minutes of celebrity that Andy Warhol coined. We have 3 series of his Polaroids from our collections. One is an actor, one is a journalist, the third one was anonymous, and suddenly, thanks to this show, her grandson recognized her, and now we know who this woman is. And so it's all those strange identity, moments.
Then there's the theme of the other and the impact of the mugshot, a late 19th century creation.
That's what we're talking about, is really the criminal and the other, and how the police and how the highest jurisdiction will tell you this is a bad person, this is a good person. So this is really a section about surveillance, not so much state surveillance, but who is watching? Yeah, Big Brother kind of. Big Brother. So this is in fact a piece called Big Brother by Nancy Burson, one of the very, very early artists working on morphing. And so here in Big Brother, she morphed Stalin with Mussolini and Mao and Hitler and Khomeini, so 5 dictators in one.
Surveillance is also depicted through other examples, like Zach Blass's face mask designed so you can't be identified, and Sophie Call's famous photo series of people sleeping. Sort of leaving the surveillance area and walking into the voyeurism portion of the exhibit.
Yes.
And what are we looking at here?
So voyeurism and intimacy.
Intimacy.
Of course, very closely linked. And so Mary Alpern's series Dirty Windows is one of the most famous, iconic series that's strictly about looking at the lives of others without being seen, so voyeurism. She rented an apartment in Wall Street, and she was taking photographs of the prostitutes and their clients in front of her windows. And those photographs are so beautiful, first of all, as classic black and white photography, beautiful objects, but also the fact that there's a complete unawareness. The subjects are absolutely unaware of what is that they are being exactly.
What should someone take away from this exhibit when they're done?
So there are many ways to take this show. You can leave this show thinking this is a very scary and crazy world, and and that's what it is. That's a statement. But I think this show is really about empowerment. I think this is the heart of this exhibition, is that empowerment, a political and social empowerment. From photography to music, Andrew Falzon found a local guitar shop where they're made entirely by hand, with a unique New York twist.
Decades ago, Manhattan was home to some of the world's finest guitar makers, but as rent and manufacturing costs increased, many of them were forced to close their doors. Here at Carmine Street Guitars, the case is quite different. Not only is each guitar top quality, each one is also an authentic piece of New York City.
So this wood is really very special that way, and it's unfortunate they throw it away, but it's great for me. I get it for free.
The guitars that Rick Kelly crafts at Carmine Street Guitars are literally treasure made from trash. At his Greenwich Village shop, Kelly uses reclaimed wood to build his 6-string instruments entirely from scratch. And even though the wood is otherwise destined for the dump, he says it's perfect for making guitars.
My wood is all seasoned over 150 years, so it's totally different. I use reclaimed wood, and it comes from these old New York City buildings. And this wood is from virgin forest from 250 years ago. And this wood has been indoors for over 160 years. So it's super seasoned and super resonant.
Rick says one of the most important parts of the guitar making process is allowing the wood to dry out, a luxury most mass manufacturers of guitars can't afford because of strict production quotas. But that extra century of drying time makes for a pretty sweet sound.
As the wood cures and ages, the resins in the wood crystallize and leave the pores open for vibration. And it's all about vibration and resonance in an instrument, whether it be a solid body or any acoustic instrument. So the more they resonate, the better they sound.
Rick's wood has spent the past century or so air drying while also serving as floor joists and roof rafters to some of the city's most treasured buildings, from the dubious to the divine.
And just last week, I got wood, those two timbers over there, from Trinity Church, which during the 9/11, was closed for many months because the fire was so close that it was covered in ash and whatnot. And they put new bells in the church. So this wood came from the bell tower of Trinity Church, which is the oldest church in New York City. I wound up with the old McGurk's, the old Suicide Hall. They were taking that building down. And I got 2 big truckloads out of there. That was a really cool find because it has a huge reputation as a house of prostitution and flop house and Depression era, and it really is a neat score, that building. Chumley's over on the old speakeasy on Bedford Street. It was a rainy day, and I happened to be walking by and saw them putting it in a garbage truck. And I said, "We'll come back tomorrow, and we'll have 2 more floors full."
The high-end craftsmanship and completely custom builds that Rick does have attracted some high-end clients. He's built custom guitars for the likes of Velvet Underground guitarist and songwriter Lou Reed, Hall & Oates guitarist and Saturday Night Live musical director G.E. Smith, blues legend Bo Diddley, and punk rocker Patti Smith. And perhaps his most famous client had a special history with the wood in his guitar.
The guitars I made for Bob Dylan, because he used to hang out there, he wanted the wood from Chumley's, and he wanted to know if the beer he spilled on the floor may be in the guitar. And I said, of course it was,
While the guitars make a sound suited to the most discerning ear, each Kelly creation is an entree for the eye as well, cooked up in concert by man and Mother Nature.
So there's knots and cracks and checks from the old days, and every time there's a nail in there, it'll oxidize and leave a big black streak. So it's a beautiful thing when you put a finish on this wood. You get all that oxidation in the color and the knots and the cracks. And I didn't know if it would go over well with customers, but they actually love it and ask to leave more in. And I've left some of the surface, the patina of the wood, tends to oxidize and gets blackened over time. And so I try to leave that on the face of a lot of them, and I call those skim tops, because I just skim across very lightly and leave as much patina as I can on the wood. And they have a kind of a blackened face to them.
And if designs left by a century of natural aging aren't enough, Kelly guitars can actually burn the wood to bring it to life.
It's called pyrography, and it's an art form that's ancient. It goes way back. And nowadays they have really sophisticated electrically heated burners. And you can get incredible detail. I guess on decoys and stuff, it's been used for many years, but now they've gotten very sophisticated with the tools. So you can actually draw like you would with pencil and come up with incredible detail. Of course, now they have lasers that do a similar thing, but it's just, you can tell right away if it was done by a laser or by a person.
Cindy Huledge is doing most of the wood burning at Kelly Guitars. One of Kelly's 2 apprentices. She's been at the shop for just over 4 years. From scrolls to seaside scenes, she's able to produce it all, color it in with pencil, and preserve it for years to come.
You have to be really precise, you know. You obviously make mistakes along the way, and you realize how important little details are with stuff.
I think Rick's guitars are sort of a love affair, you know, a love affair with the city, with the wood, this place. There's so few places like this left.
Stuart Simons is a guitarist and regular client of Rick's and gigs around Manhattan. Since he randomly walked into Carmine Street Guitars 7 years ago, they have been his go-to.
It's tone. It literally comes down to tone. Like, you know, I would love a 50s telly, you know, in theory. But because you're searching for that tone, and it's just the way that the wood settles after all those years. And they don't make guitars like that anymore. Rick's guitars already have that sound. You know, there's some magic in the wood. What he's finding, how he's putting it together. There's some real magic in the sound.
The average Kelly guitar costs around $2,000, which is on par with other high-end American custom-built guitars. Whether you're buying a guitar for your ears or your eyes, after 40 years of guitar building for Rick Kelly, it's all about pride.
This old wood, you know, was around when George Washington was walking around. You know, this stuff has seen more life and changes in New York City than we can imagine. You know? So I feel like the wood being up above us sees everything, and then we get to build stuff out of this great old stories.
I'm Andrew Falzon for Arts in the City.
She was a legendary and beloved Broadway leading lady for 5 decades, and now Mary Martin is a subject of a new biography. Pat Collins speaks to the author about Mary's secretive private life and her unparalleled career.
I'm flying. Look at me way up high, suddenly here am I, I'm flying.
Before she was Peter Pan and Maria Von Trapp in The Sound of Music, or Nellie Forbush in South Pacific, she was a high-spirited girl with talent and ambition.
She grew up in Weatherford, Texas. By the time she was 5 or 6, she was singing and performing. She just exuded this kind of love of life and people.
In Some Enchanted Evenings, the biography's author David Kaufman reveals little-known information about Mary's private life, including her relationship with Jean Arthur, whose classic movies included Mr. Deeds Goes to Town.
Jean Arthur was already a star in Hollywood when Mary became a contract player at Paramount.
Did they have a sexual relationship?
They did apparently have a sexual relationship.
What would be the damage to their respective careers?
It would have ended them, obviously. She basically was a very asexual person, and sex just wasn't important to her. She did everything was governed by that ambition and desire to perform and to be loved by the world.
Mary made several movies, but her heart belonged to Broadway. Mary's career was managed by her second husband, Richard Halliday. Theirs was an unconventional marriage.
He made her into a great beauty. He also dressed her. He also did her hair.
Played all the roles.
Every conceivable role. And as somebody else pointed out, Mary was like, he was this gay man, and she was basically like this little doll that he was dressing.
I'm gonna watch that man right out of my hair. I'm gonna watch that man right out of my hair.
South Pacific is what made her the most legendary figure that she became. She did something that had never been done before on the stage, and that was she washed her hair at every performance.
At the age of 46, Mary starred in another Rodgers and Hammerstein Broadway show, The Sound of Music.
Very few people know is that Mary Martin and her husband, manager Richard Halliday, commissioned Rodgers and Hammerstein to write the show for Mary Martin. It's amazing, but it's true.
You're my baby,
And she's my ball.
but you're the one that breaks the law.
In 1973, Mary and her son Larry Hagman, who created the J.R. role in Dallas, reconciled after years of being estranged.
What was the cause of this long estrangement between Mary and Larry?
It was primarily that she abandoned him when he was, less than a year old. He was angry and rightfully so.
Someday, when I'm awfully old.
Would Mary Martin be a Broadway star today?
She would be a major star today. A Broadway, of course. She was a comedienne. She had a voice. She lived for everybody else, which is sad in a way because she herself was really not that happy.
In 1990, Mary died of colon cancer at the age of 76. Shortly before her death, Mary wrote a farewell letter to a friend. I asked David to read the last line in that letter.
I love to go fast. I have no fear. And then I'll just fly out that window and not come back. What a way to go.
I'm Pat Collins for Arts in the City.
Supporting theater artists is just one of the things the Drama League of New York has done in its long and acclaimed history. Donna Hanover has their story.
The Drama League's annual Distinguished Performance Award is highly coveted, and you can only win it once in a lifetime.
First of all, my policy is to thank the Drama League. I'm solemnly grateful to be in a column with all of these nominees.
The winner at the 2016 luncheon was Lin-Manuel Miranda for Hamilton. But the Drama League actually works 365 days a year to keep theater vibrant. For 4 decades, it has run the Directors Project, training young directors and having them assist veterans in the field. Mark Brokaw, who's had huge success on and off Broadway directing The Lions, How I Learned to Drive, and other shows, is a 1986 alum.
My participation in that project opened doors that I had no idea even existed. You spent half of the time with a theater in New York and half of the time with a theater regionally. It produced a play that I directed, and it invited everybody in New York to see it. And that is it sounds easy, but that's an impossible thing to achieve when you're just starting out. I think every opportunity I've had in my career since that time is a direct result of being a part of the Directors Project.
Drama League Executive Artistic Director Gabriel Stellian-Shanks says they're thrilled that Mark is now on the group's board.
Mark Brokaw is a hero of this field. He starts in the 3rd year of the Directors Project, grows to such acclaim directing the Pulitzer Prize-winning How I Learned to Drive with Mary Louise Parker, who he is returning to collaborate with this season on Broadway in Heisenberg. He has a career that I think all of us would dream of in the American theater. Most of the directors on Broadway, many of the directors working off Broadway, across Europe, in television, in theater, in opera, they started in our program. Anything we can do to use our professional networks on Broadway, off Broadway, around the country, around the world, in London and in Europe, to help these young artists find the production support they need, the money they need to stay alive, the training they need to excel, and to hone and grow their talent is really what the Drama League's here for.
The Drama League began 100 years ago during World War I.
They would do blood drives outside Broadway theaters for the war effort. They would put on plays for the ships that were docked, the naval ships on the Hudson River. They would send play scripts so soldiers could read them in Europe.
Since then, in addition to the Directors Project, the Drama League has helped audiences, actors, producers, playwrights, and backstage hands in many ways.
We are serving over 3,000 artists a year with classes, workshops with internationally renowned artists, rehearsal space that is under market value or free. Our role from the beginning of our existence has been to strengthen and enhance the American theater.
Board member Norm Lewis is well known for his Tony-nominated performance in Porgy and Bess, roles in Les Miserables and Little Mermaid, and being the first African-American to play the lead in The Phantom of the Opera.
I've been so blessed in my career, and I've been helped in so many instances, and if there's any way for me to pay it forward, I saw this opportunity to get with the Drama League, where I can help people come in and benefit from the things that they offer.
Who is welcome to go on dramaleague.org and join?
We are selecting the most talented across the country. And so it's a seal of approval for a great assistant director, for a great person to work on a project.
I love working with these people. There's something special about being able to help someone who is just starting out. I think is crucial to the American theater.
All of this work by the Drama League really comes into focus when you go past the Legacy Gallery. It has posters of some of the great shows Drama League alums have directed. I'm Donna Hanover for Arts in the City.
Our Tinabeth Pina learns about and participates in a little bit of belly dancing at the Serena Belly Dance Museum in Chelsea.
18 years ago, I did a segment on a world-renowned belly dancer who taught and lived right here in New York City.
It's a lot harder than it looks.
Look, this is down, 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 girl. Who knew? Years later, I'd be doing a story on a museum in her honor.
This is an album cover that she was on, Belly Dance, the wild music and the how-to. That's young Serena over there.
Lenny Cohen and her husband Scott Wilson are co-founders of the Serena Belly Dance Museum in the Showplace Design Center on West 25th Street in Manhattan.
Serena Wilson was an award-winning and world-renowned dancer, teacher, and choreographer of belly dancing, and she was also my mother-in-law. And she's credited with helping to elevate belly dancing from more than being a novelty to being an actual legitimate artistic form of dance. Everything here in this collection were things that used to be Serena's that she gathered from her trips all around the world.
I'm Scott Wilson, and Serena was my mother. Many artists were fascinated with the allure and mystery of the Middle East. This painting is by the American artist Raymond Nelson, and it was his fantasy of what life was like in the Middle East based on flying carpets and harems.
Many believe belly dance was introduced to America at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Americans had never seen anything like the performer who called herself Little Egypt. She incorporated unusual Eastern movements into her captivating dance.
American dancers weren't used to seeing isolations like just moving your rib cage, or just moving your hips, or just moving your head.
Lenny offered to show me some belly dance moves, but first, I had something to show her.
Serena gave me this 18 years ago, and I kept it.
Wow, you brought your own hip scarf.
I brought my own hip scarf.
Make a big hip circle. Really bend your knees. And we're gonna close and open.
People call me on the phone and say, "Can you explain what the class is all about?" And I'll say, "No, I can't. Come and watch."
What do you think she thinks?
Oh, she's saying thank you to Scott because he put all of her things on display, and he wants people to remember her, and for those who didn't know her, he wants them to learn about her. So I think she's looking down and smiling and saying, finally, I have my museum.
The Serena Belly Dance Museum is open through December 30th, 2016. Classes in the Serena technique are held throughout the year. For museum and class schedules, visit serenastudiosonline.com.
For Arts in the City, I'm Tinabeth Pina.
A museum dedicated to just one man? That's our hidden gem this month, and Mike Gilliam gives us the details.
Nikolai Konstantinovich Roerich was born in Russia in 1874 and dedicated his life to historical exploration and art. This unassuming townhouse on the Upper West Side of Manhattan is the museum home to a cross-section of his vast artistic legacy. Roerich's work defies categorization. He was a mystic thinker and seeker of enlightenment. He traveled far and wide to explore the mythic origins of humanity, trekking all over Central Asia, across the rivers and valleys of India, the crags and peaks of the Himalayas, and across the Gobi Desert. Eastern spiritual values are reflected in much of his creative work. In this piece, Pilgrim of the Radiant City, a distant settlement is the goal of a solitary traveler, indicative of Roerich's own quest for knowledge. Understanding culture and its role in human life was for Roerich a lifelong pursuit. Artifacts from these untracked regions are plentiful in the Roerich Museum and underscore what he believed to be the spiritual strivings of humanity. Roerich's nearly 7,000 works include costume and scenery designs for operas and theatrical productions. Much of his work depicted religious teachers as a testimony to the common roots of man's faith. Painting, music, singing, dance, and theater. Culture, Roerich wrote, is the accumulation of the highest bliss, highest beauty, and highest knowledge. I'm Mike Gilliam for Arts in the City.
That's our show for today. Thanks for watching. For more information on any of our stories, go to CUNY.tv. I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson, and we'll see you next time on Arts in the City.